We were asked a question by a person that's struggling with a group. How do I cope with an abusive person who I have to interact with? And I think a lot of us have this kind of problem. Now, you can use a couple of different ways. We've seen in politics where they threaten one another, and for some reason, people get along afterwards. But in Christianity, if we're working on what God talks about, the love of God, if we're working on that premises, then we have to understand that we'll recognize people because we love them and we love one another. And an abusive person doesn't love. So we have to understand, I mean, even as the song says, you'll know them by their love. But if we look at what's happening in this world, it's because we don't truly love one another. That's why we have the problems. And a person who's abusive is probably not abusive just to you or somebody else. They're usually abusive to a lot of different people. And sometimes they're only abusive to somebody that's close to them, but they sort of hide it when they're in public. So we have to look at where that abuse is coming from. And there's a couple ways to do it. Give the person something to do that keeps them occupied and away from the normal business that you're trying to conduct. Or sometimes you have to exclude them, because an abusive person will ruin the results of what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to promote veganism and animal rights, you have to do it with love. You can't do it with by being an abusive person. It won't work. People don't want to listen to somebody like that. They migrate to people who are peaceable, loving, and that live it in their lives. They're not a Dr. Jekyll creating a Mr. Hyde and you switch back and forth. It's not that. It's having that consistency in your life that you live in love. And the problem is that an abusive person doesn't. And if you're the only one that's in a group, and the group wants that abusive person, that group is not going to really be successful. They may succeed in doing something, but they're not going to achieve a major goal, because they're going to turn people off. We need to draw people in, not push them away. And people want to see something else. And maybe you can talk to that person. But if the whole group is part of that person's attitude, it's the wrong group to be successful in. And I don't know how else to explain it, but the person is not acting in God's will. They're acting in their own will. That's why they appear to be abusive. So what do we do? we have to think about what's important in God's will. What does God want? And if an abusive person isn't part of that, then we have to say goodbye, unfortunately. Amen.